Every baseball player fears its rival, the Ofer, a horrible beast that devours batting averages and destroys the confidence of even the greatest players. When Willie Mays began his career with an 0 for 20, he told manager Leo DeRocher to send him back down to the minors. DeRocher did no such thing, and Mays got his first hit soon after, a homer off of future Hall of Famer Warren Spahn. Hitless streaks are just part of the game. Baseball largely appeals to the mathematically minded because statistics can serve up some crazy storylines, such as in 1941, when Joe DiMaggio was mired in a god-awful 0 for 20 slump of his own, the kind where players start to worry that they've been space jammed. But Joltin' Joe managed to end the streak there, and then kept on going, until he'd hit in 56 games in a row. Talk about going from ice cold to red hot. But Joltin' Joe wasn't done. After he went hitless in game 57, he ran off another 16 in a row. So his 0 for 20 then morphed into hits in 72 out of 73 games. And in a microcosm, that's how statistics in baseball work. It's an endless regression towards the mean. Cold streaks follow hot streaks, and vice versa. Getting too fixated on small sample sizes can distort the larger picture of a player. Hall of Famer Joe Morgan had 2 streaks where he went 0 for 30, but those streaks mean nothing when weighed against the totality of his amazing career. At the end of the day, the best players just go cold less than everyone else, but they do still go cold. The advent of StatCast has only added another grueling dimension to the horror of the hitless streak. Thanks to the miracle of cloud-based computing, we now know much more about a batted ball than ever before. For ages, baseball players have known that they're hitting into some bad luck, but eventually the bloops would fall in and things would even out. Today, they know with a fairly higher degree of certainty whether or not this is actually true. So, with all of that in mind, who've been the victims of the most punishing hitless streaks in baseball history, and what became of these players afterwards? But do you know what can be just as punishing as a long hitless streak? Feeling underrepresented in an injury case. That's why today's sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, is here to help bring the process into the 21st century, and at no cost to you unless you win. Wait, what? Yeah, unless you win, Morgan & Morgan isn't going to charge you a penny. That's probably why over 3 million people a year use America's largest injury law firm. As of now, over $15 billion have been recovered for their clients, who also enjoy an entire dedicated legal team on their case, complete with investigators, paralegals, and customer case specialists, rather than just a simple lawyer. So, is it complicated like most things in the legal world? Nope. You can submit a claim in just 8 steps or less, with everything you need being able to be submitted from your cell phone. Insurance companies already employ an army of people designed to get you the lowest possible amounts back for your injury case. Why not have someone like Morgan & Morgan to help you fight back? If you're interested, you can start your claim at www.forthepeople.com/madethecut or by dialing 529. Again, that's www.forthepeople.com/madethecut or by dialing 529. You can also find the link in our description or pinned comment. Now, back to our video. Player 1, Chris Davis. It takes some real mental gymnastics to get your head around this stat. 0 for 54. At first, it just doesn't seem possible that a major league hitter could go to the plate for basically 17 straight games and not get even a single hit, even on accident. No little dribbler, no Texas leaguer, no seeing eye single, no excuse me dink to the opposite field. Hits come in all shapes and sizes, and while some are truly majestic, plenty are meh, even downright ugly, but they all count the same in the scorebook. Try telling that to Chris Davis, owner of the worst OFER in the history of Major League Baseball. Somehow, some way, for 62 straight plate appearances, he didn't scratch out even a slow roller. Nothing. Nada. Simple probability tells you this is impossible. You can't toss 54 heads in a row, for example. I mean, I guess you can, but it might take years. The chances of doing so is 1 in a quadrillion. Davis sports a career batting average of .233, meaning that he got roughly 23 hits every 100 ABs. By this logic, he should have gotten around 12 hits during his epic 0 for 54 in 2018 through 2019. Even if we take his horrible stat averages from his later career, that still should have been at least 7 to 9 hits. The fact is, Davis did earn those hits. Well, sorta. If you watch Foolish Baseball's in-depth video on Davis's streak, you'll quickly realize that he hit around 12 or so balls hard enough to get hits off of them. The expected batting averages on those knocks range from 580 to over 900. Let me repeat. Davis hit one ball that 9 out of 10 times, based on exit velo and launch angle, becomes an MLB-based knock. His got caught. Why? Well, in large part because of the shift. RIP. No one in MLB was more heavily shifted than Davis at the time, and no one in MLB struggled to hit more against it. And it's not like the 0 for 54 came out of nowhere. In 2018, when his hitless streak began, Davis would set another dubious record, the lowest season batting average of any player eligible for the batting title, at 168. He also had a K rate of 41% that season, and an offensive WAR of -2.6. Pretty grim numbers for someone earning $23 million. To be fair, Chris Davis in 2012 hit 33 homers and drove an 85 while making $488,000, and he still led the O's into the playoffs. No one was screaming about him being underpaid then, or the next season when he led the majors in homers for $3.3 million. Just like no one backed him up when in 2013, baseball stopped allowing him to take Adderall to treat his ADHD, something he'd done since 2008. In some ways, his career never fully recovered from the stigma of a 25-game suspension he got in 2014. It wasn't fair that Davis got punished for treating a medical condition with a treatment prescribed by his doctor. We ended up making a whole video on that subject as a matter of fact. But many things in life aren't fair, and no one knows this better than Chris Davis. On April 12, 2019, he singled off of Rick Porcello. The start of a hot streak? Fat chance. Davis ended 2019 hitting 179 with 12 homers and an OPS plus of 59. He retired to a sad whimper after the 2020 season, though he is still set to earn $3.5 million a year for over a decade from now in deferred payments from his huge 2016 contract. Now, that's another streak worth examining, but in a different kind of video altogether. Player number 2, Eugenio Velez. Talk about a mic drop. It was September 28, 2011, and the season for the Los Angeles Dodgers was nearing its conclusion. They were in third place in the NL West, hovering at the 500 mark, pretty much going nowhere. In the 8th inning with a 7-0 lead against the D-backs, manager Don Mattingly sent a pinch hitter to the plate in a meaningless game. But not just any pinch hitter, Eugenio Velez, who 5 games before had tied a record no batter in baseball wants, the longest hitless streak by a non-pitcher at the time, at over 45. Velez had whiffed 3 times in 3 ABs against the Padres, and he now was a co-owner of the record. In the second to last game of the season, Mattingly gave Velez a chance to end the streak, or to outright own it by himself. Since Velez hadn't got a hit since May 2010, there was a good chance Velez would be 0 for 46 and a record holder. In fact, had Velez not singled in extra innings for his last hit, he would be looking at an 0 for 66. Wait, this guy was a .241 career hitter. During his first 3 years in the bigs, Velez hit over .260. He was another talented middle infielder from San Pedro de Macorís in the Dominican Republic, a shortstop hamlet that had produced 99 major leaguers, including Fernando Tatis Sr. and Jr., Robinson Cano, and Alfonso Soriano, among other stars. Few players on earth have produced such a trove of baseball talent. When he came up in 2007, he was considered a decent prospect of the San Francisco Giants, a speedy contact hitter who could wreak havoc on the bases. But by 2010, he was in Fresno, and the Giants were headed to one of their first 3 World Series championships. But a fresh start with the Dodgers hadn't exactly helped Velez. Having gone hitless in his last 9 ABs with the Giants, he then went hitless in every one of his Dodgers at-bats, including the one on September 28th, when he cemented his legacy with an over 46. He wasn't hitting into a rash of bad luck, mind you. There were almost no close calls, just strikeouts and weak grounders. He did hit 2 line drives, but without StatCast, we don't really know how hard they were hit, or where they were. Then, Velez's career ended. Technically, his streak didn't. If, magically somehow, he managed to make it back to the MLB today, he'd pick up right where he left off. Velez did manage to keep playing professional baseball in Mexico and the Dominican Republic for years after his 0 for 46 tanked him, so props to him for holding on to his dream for as long as he possibly could, despite one of the most depressing stretches in baseball history for any hitter. Player number 3, Craig Counsell. Craig Counsell was just named manager of the Chicago Cubs on a huge deal that will pay him more than he earned during his playing days, but before he was a managerial wizard, he dealt with a similar stretch as Velez. What's crazy is, it happened at nearly the same time. On the surface, it seemed like Craig Counsell was a scrappy, hard-nosed player who was too mentally tough to have registered such a long hitless streak. He was a .255 career hitter with a WAR of 22.4. In 2001, he was MVP of the NLCS and helped lead the D-backs to a World Series victory over the Yankees. But the over 45 record that Velez broke in 2011 had belonged to the very same Counsell. What's truly bewildering is that Craig had held the record for only about 7 weeks. Perhaps no season in MLB history dwelt on hitless streaks like 2011, and for good reason. First, when Counsell was nearing 0 for 45, the world's greatest sabermetricians went into something like a frenzy, because it wasn't entirely clear what the official record was. It was clear that broadcaster Dave Campbell had gone 0 for 45 in 1973, while playing for 3 different teams. But back then, the game wasn't as stats-centric, and until Counsell was nearing the mark, Campbell had no idea what his hitless streak truly was. The record, it was thought, had been 0 for 46, set in 1909 by catcher Bill Bergen, who many researchers call the worst hitter in baseball history. But upon further review, it turned out Bergen had really gone 0 for 45, not 46, because records from 1909 were spotty and hard to decipher. On August 1st, 2011, Counsell pinch hit for pitcher Zach Greinke and popped up, an unremarkable play except for the fact that with that AB, Counsell had tied both Campbell and Bergen. The irony is that Zack Greinke was a fearsome hitter for a pitcher, with a .225 career average, and during that streak, Counsell seen his own average dip from .236 to .145, which was exactly what Greinke was hitting at the time. The difference was, Greinke arguably had more raw power. Again, unlike Chris Davis, Counsell wasn't hitting the ball hard during his streak. You see, sports can be cruel to players who are nearing the end of their career, and Counsell, at 40 and in his 16th year as a big leaguer, surely was doing that. He would retire as an active player right after Eugenio Velez broke the dubious record. There's a truism in baseball that backup catchers make good managers, because they can relate to all the players on the team, top to bottom. The same perhaps can be said of those who suffer through prolonged struggles at the plate. Craig Counsell, a Notre Dame grad and very intelligent man, became a very astute manager, perhaps in no small part because he'd undergone the turmoil of failure and had battled through it. Baseball is truly a game of failure after all, and Craig Counsell lived through it to tell the tale. Player number 4, Justin Ruggiano. Hitless streaks can be like the flu. When they rage, they can cull the herd. Velez saw his career end with one. Counsell had to endure one as his retirement loomed. Davis had already fallen steeply down the food chain when his over 54 came and went. But can a player in his prime come down with this dreaded condition? Sadly, of course, yes. But there's a silver lining in the case of Justin Ruggiano. In 2007, the Tampa Bay Rays were brimming with talent. They had incredible athletes like Carl Crawford, B.J. Upton, Delman Young, and Elijah Dukes in the outfield, ready to do damage at the plate and on the bases. But there was another outfield prospect no one much talked about, who would go on to have a productive 9-year MLB career, Justin Ruggiano. But how was he ever going to get in the field? He broke in 2007 for a cup of coffee, and in 2008, the year the Rays made it to World Series, he appeared in 45 games. However, he didn't do much at the plate in either year, and with the Rays now one of the best teams in baseball, he spent all of 2009 and 2010 at AAA Durham, thereby making Ruggiano the perfect quad-A player. Too good for the minors, but not quite an MLB talent. But then something funny happened when Ruggiano turned 29. He got better. He started hitting over 300 in the minors consistently, and when the Miami Marlins gave him a chance to play in 2012, he was ready. He hit 13 homers in 91 games and established himself as a certified MLB talent. After years of toiling in obscurity, he'd made it. Then came 2013. The steady progress Ruggiano had made came to a screeching halt on July 8th when Ruggiano went hitless. The streak continued for 47 straight plate appearances and 42 official at-bats before it ended, mercifully, before Ruggiano broke Velez's record. But Ruggiano was a tough Texan, and he didn't just break out of said slump. No, he slugged out, hitting bombs and going back to his new old self right after. In the offseason, the Marlins traded him to the Cubs, where Ruggiano put up an OPS plus of 112. The next year, he split time between Seattle and the Dodgers, with his combined OPS plus of 123 being nearly 25% better than league average. Beyond this, he would play in small parts of 2 more productive seasons before hanging up his cleats. Ruggiano's entire career is a testament to his unwavering tenacity. Going 0-for-42 was nothing compared to being stuck in the minors for season after season, and he emerged from both that terrible situation and the reverse hitting streak victorious, tallying career earnings of over $7 million when all was said and done, while registering as an above-average MLB hitter overall, with a career 104 OPS plus. Player number 5, Brandon Lowe. There are streak hitters, and then there are players like Brandon Lowe. Rays fans know that this undersized slugger can carry a team for weeks, and then just as suddenly turn cold as ice, seemingly unable to make contact with a beach ball. His punishing hitless streak isn't one of the longest in MLB history, but perhaps one of the worst timed, as his over 36 in the ALDS spanned 2 seasons, from 2020 through 2021, against the Yankees and Red Sox, teams that Lowe had owned at various times since his arrival in 2019. He got nary a hit, and struck out about 50% of the time. In 2020, the Rays survived his flailing, bailed out by Randy Arozarena and Mike Brosseau. Then, although in the ALCS and World Series Lowe had only 4 hits, they were all homers, all game changers, showing you in a microcosm how Lowe rolls. One week he can't hit a soft toss, and the next he's tallying clutch hit after clutch hit. The Rays couldn't survive his streakiness in 2021, the year the team won 100 games, and Lowe hit 39 homers, while registering an OPS plus of 140. Against the Red Sox, Lowe did absolutely nothing, and the team dropped 3 straight after winning Game 1. The fact is, Brandon Lowe is one of the worst hitters in postseason history overall, even when his reverse streak is put to the side. His batting averages of 115 and an OBP of 167 are the lowest among players with a minimum of 100 plate appearances, ever. It's a hard pill to swallow, since Lowe is one of the best power-hitting second basemen the game has seen in recent years. But it's also just as likely that should the Rays get back to the postseason in 2024, something they are likely to do, Lowe could go off and rectify these stats in nearly one single stretch. So far, we haven't included pitchers in our discussion, but they do deserve a bit of a brief mention. The all-time hitless record belongs to Jon Lester, one of the game's greatest competitors, who beat the Yips long enough to tally 200 career wins and nearly 2,500 Ks. This kind of longevity also allowed him to log an 0 for 66 nightmare in the box. As an AL pitcher with the Red Sox and A's, Lester got roughly 4 ABs a season, which all resulted in fat goose eggs, and so when he signed with the Cubs in 2015, he was already riding an 0 for 41 that extended back to 2006. The thing is, in high school, Lester was a stud athlete who routinely hit homers with his solid swing, making hard contact often enough otherwise as well. After he finally notched that first career hit off his buddy John Lackey, snapping the record 0 for 66 to begin his career, Lester would go on to gather 42 more hits, including 4 bombs. In 2019, he had 188. He doesn't deserve to hold this record, based on his skill set alone. And now, thanks to the universal DH rule, he would likely own it for the foreseeable future, if not ever. Someone who might so deserve this title is Wei-Yin Chen, who owned an 0 for 51 to begin his career. After signing with the Marlins in 2016, he carried an 0 for 6 start from the AL into the National League, where he promptly went 0 for 45. But all of that changed in 2017 during his first start, when he hit a 65-mile-per-hour roller to short and reached on an infield single, the definition of a lucky knock. He did rebound somewhat with 6 hits in 2018, retiring from the game soon after with a career average of 0.68. It doesn't matter who you are, the 0 for monster can find you. Take George Springer as an example. Despite being one of the best all-around players in the game for years, this past season, he weathered an 0 for 35. Stats tell us he was largely hitting into bad luck. His exit velocities remained at his career level, with his expected WOBA being 20 points higher than his real, 336 to 306. Springer ended the season hitting 257, with a slightly lower power total relative to his career norm. He'll be 34 next year, with his monster 2019 of 39 dingers and a 292 batting average seeming further and further away every season. So, at the end of this, are hitless streaks harbingers of a decline, or just a small sample size that should be dismissed? His Springer streak, for example, a sign the Jays should unload him now, while he still has value, or should they look at his expected numbers and determine that he'll likely return to his career level, at least before the aging curve is considered? The truth is, at the end of the day, like we mentioned above, every player will go through cold streaks. Whether they go completely hitless during these periods or not, it's how they come out of this that define them as ball players. In this video, we've seemingly depicted both sides of the coin. Counsell beating his offer with the mentality that would go on to define his excellence as a coach, and Riano not letting his confidence slip, even after years of toiling in the minors, enough to post above average numbers for years after. Davis, on the other hand, could never truly seem to emerge victorious. Even after his nightmare run ended, he still ranked as one of the worst ball players ever until his premature retirement after 2021. Eugenio Velez never saw his streak end, immortalizing himself as the only player on this list with his slump still intact. As for Lowe, I guess we'll have to see what happens with his career, as since his cold streak from 2020 through 2021 and some of the biggest moments of the year, he's managed to post just marginally above average hitting totals in the low 110 OPS plus range, a far cry from his 125 to 150 heydays before that. Now, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and click this playlist for other essay content just like this. Have a great rest of your day.